Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. Got another Master Duel video for you, and come on, are you even surprised about this one? Of course, we are coming back to our Adventure Spright deck, because if you know anything about me, you know that I love Spright, and we're always going to make time to feature it here on the channel. So, if you're not a fan of Spright, gotta say, you're in the wrong place. But no, you're all good. In any case, so, Adventure Spright, yeah. This is relatively similar to the list we played last season. Last season, though, I made room for a very small Diabell Star package, right? We're playing 3 Wanted, 1 Diabell, and then one of the Sinful Spoils Quick Play spell, the Reclia, I think it's called. But decided to cut those out just because I wasn't, like, the most impressed with how they performed. I don't think that Diabell would be bad, necessarily, in a deck like this, but I do think you would have to build the deck much differently. One of the main things we weren't able to play because we were trying out Diabell last time is the Melfi package. So Melfis are back. Caddy and Penny, of course, as well as the Melfi of the Forest and the Herald of the Arclight here in the extra deck. Ideally, I would also like to be playing the Merry Melfis, the level 4 Synchro. I really like having the option to go into either the Herald or the Merry Melfis because sometimes you actually don't want the Omni. That sounds a little bit weird. You would think like, well, wouldn't you always want the Omni negate? But remember that Caddy only procs when our opponent summons a monster, and sometimes by that point, it's too late for the Omni Negate to really be very effective. So I like playing the, for those who aren't familiar with the card, I am referring to the level 4 Synchro Merry Melfis, which when it's special summoned, it bounces a monster, right? So you could potentially do that as well. But as far as this extra deck goes, I don't want to cut a single card from it. I think every single card here is very, very important. Or at least more so than the optional level 4 Synchro option. The optional option, great. Anyway, so yeah, like I said, we are still rocking a lot of the same stuff in the main deck, though. Back down to 2 Angler, because it's not, like, terrible to open this card thanks to Fateful Adventure, but we don't have quite as many ways to send it from hand to the graveyard without the Diabell, so back down to the 2 of those there. We are still rocking 3 Nimble Sunfish, especially because we have the number 2 Ninja Shadow Mosquito. And during this play session, actually, when I was playing games of this deck, we had not just 1, but 2 games where we OTK'd people with Shadow Mosquito plus Sunfish. So it might seem really niche, and to be fair, it kind of is, but it does come up and it is relevant. Oh yeah, we're also finally playing 2 of each red and carrot. I don't think in the last build we were. So as you can see, in order to fit the Diabell Star package last time, we ended up having to play, or we ended up having to cut, rather, a lot of cards I do think end up being very important for the deck. The Melfis and the additional Spright cards, right? So those are back in. Of course, Water Enchantress is now at 2, so we are rocking 2 copies of her. I think the only card I'm really missing from the main deck, as in I kind of forgot to put it in when I was making the list, was Foolish Burial, although looking at the list now, I don't know what I would cut for it, honestly. I don't even know if it's really necessary, because especially we're on the Terratop package, and that's going to be our main way of cheating the Water Enchantress into the yard. Now, of course, the Foolish Burial does have another utility, the Nimble Angler, but we also have Sprint for that as well. So, even though we have some monsters that really do care about being sent to the graveyard, I don't think we actually need to be playing Foolish, because we have other ways to get them there. Speedway Terratop at 3 might seem a little bit weird in a Spright deck. It certainly raised a lot of eyebrows whenever I've played this deck in chat sometimes. Oh, by the way, our first 2 games are going to be on ladder. We actually have a couple of games from a duel room we had recently on stream. It was a lot of fun. If you're ever down to join us in one of those, feel free to check out my description below. You're going to find a link over to my Twitch page. You can follow over there. I also will occasionally, I do usually post my schedules on Twitter as well. I'm not for the next couple of weeks just because I'm pretty busy with IRL stuff, but so streams are going to be a little bit more spontaneous, but just know that usually you can also find my schedule over on Twitter as well. But anyway, as I was saying about Adventure Spright, yeah, no, I really think that, I was explaining the Terratops. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked there. Terratops, yeah, might seem a little bit weird. Indeed, when I played this deck in chat, I got a couple of eyebrows raised, but the Terratops Octon board goes into the Cherubini, which of course bins the Water Enchantress. That not only sets up your adventure line, but also we have Sprint and the Nimble. So Sprint can be made with any 2 monsters, including a level rank or link 2 monster, right? Cherubini just so happens to be Link 2. So if you make the Sprint off of the Cherubini, then you can dump the Angler, summon 2 Sunfish, and now you have far more than enough materials to do Spright plays. So The reason to play Terratop really comes down to the fact that if you open Terratop plus literally any monster you can normal summon, it doesn't even have to be level 2, because the sprint is any 2 monsters, including at least 1 level rank or League 2, and you'll already have the League 2 in the form of Cherubini. So I've seen people say like, oh yeah, because then you can special red or carrot, right? But no, literally Terratop and any monster you can normal summon, any one of them. It could even be Skull Servant. That is a full Adventure Spright combo right there. That gets you your token, your Griffin Rider, as well as your Spright board. So the Spright board being Elf, IP, Melfi Caddy, and then either Spright red or carrot, right? So yeah, it's a very, very effective strategy. And not one that I see explored a lot. So I think a lot of people, and I understand it too, with so many Spright cards being hit, right? It's really easy. That's not a Spright card, I meant to click on starter. With so many Spright cards being hit, right? Some of which very, very unfairly. It's very easy to kind of write this deck off as just like dead or bad. Especially if you're not actually out there exploring it or playing games with it. But as somebody who is always exploring this deck, I can tell you, like, this is a very, very cohesive strategy. It might not look like it, but you'll see how it is in the games we have coming up here. I'm not claiming this is a Saber Tier 1 deck, by the way, not trying to make that claim. But I think if enough people actually had attention on Spright as much as it deserves, then I think Spright would be a lower tier 3 deck. I think it would find its way out of Rogue. There's a lot of decks like that, by the way. There's so many decks out there that are in Rogue that if enough people were on them, they would just be in tier 3, because that's really about where their power level is. It's just representation, or really lack thereof, that brings them down to Rogue. I believe that Spright is one of those decks, but again, I'm not going to make a claim this deck is any higher than probably like mid tier 3 at best. So let's go ahead and break this list down card by card, and then we'll take a look at some of these games here. So we're playing 3 Nimble Sunfish, 3 Maxi, 2 Nimble Angler, 1 Nimble Beaver, 1 Melfi Caddy, 2 Spright Blue, 1 Spright Jet, 2 Spright Red, 2 Spright Carrot, 1 Melfi Penny. We got 3 Speedray Terratop, 1 Speedray Toxtonborg, 3 Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, 2 Water Enchantress of the Temple, 1 Wandering Griffin Rider, 1 Nibiru the Primal Being, 2 Rite of Armistier, 1 Dracoback the Rideable Dragon, 1 Fateful Adventure, 2 Called by the Grave, 1 Crossout Designator, 2 Spright Starter, 1 Spright Gamma Burst, 1 Spright Smashers, and then 2 Infinite Impermanence. And that's going to be it for our main deck, which is actually at 42 cards, mainly because I'm not trying to draw Toxtonborg or some of the adventure stuff, right? For the extra deck, we're on 1 Herald of the Arclight, 1 Melfi of the Forest, 1 Oni B Maru Soul Sweeper, 2 Gigantic Spright, 1 number 2 Ninja Shadow Mosquito, 1 Downward Magician, 1 Divine Arsenal, Zeus Sky Thunder, 1 Cherubini, Ebon Angel of the Burning Abyss, 1 IP Masquerada, 2 Spright Elf, 1 Spright Sprend, 1 Mech Knight Crusadia Avermax, and finally, 1 Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. So that'll do it for our list. Let's see these games. Alright, our first game is going to be up against Snake Eye, because it wouldn't be a deck profile. It wouldn't be playing in this season without playing against Snake Eye, right? But especially for like lower rogue or like rogue or like lower tier decks, I want to show off playing against Snake Eye if possible. So going second yet again. Always going second apparently this season. Opponent's leading with a Wanted, not during the draw phase, but no Droll and Lockbird in this deck, so never punished for them. Sending another Wanted for the Diabell. They're going to activate, but I'm not going to use Imperm here. This is something that I still get questions about, and yeah, I generally think that if you're going to use Ash or Valor or Imperm at any point against the Snake Eye combo line, just hold it for the Snake Eye Ash, right? The reason to do that, by the way, is because my opponent could very easily just drop a normal summon Snake Eye Ash from their hand. They might be using the Diabell stuff to bait me, right? So Alright, we're going to Imperm the Snake Eye Ash. There's about a 50-50 shot of this just ending their turn. They are going to use the Wanted here to get a draw, which is a really good sign for me. So this way they don't immediately have an answer in hand. They're going to normal summon a Droll and Lockbird and link it off for the Link Karibo. The other nice thing about the Wanted being used is that if there doesn't being a follow-up turn from our opponent, now they can't use the original Sin to guarantee to get the Ash and guarantee that follow-up plays, right? So they end up going into Hita, despite me not having any fires in the air. They're just going to end on that set 1 card and then pass over to me. Top decking another Terratop here. Not the best draw, but we don't need any. We honestly didn't need anything in particular from our top decks here. Get a special Terratop and then summon the Toxtonborg, linking them both off into Cherubini. Cherubini effect will, of course, send the Water Enchantress in the deck to the graveyard. Water Enchantress is going to activate, and that will add us the Rite of Armistier. Gonna activate the Rite of Armistier to summon my Adventure token, and then place the Fateful Adventure from the deck. Normal summoning Spright Red, so that way we get to add the Fateful, the Dracoback off the Fateful Adventure. The other reason, by the way, to normal summon Spright Red here is because I believe the normal summon Red is actually my 5th summon, right? Terratop 1, Takusan Borg 2, Cherubini 3, Adventure Token 4, and then Red 5. So yeah, I want to make sure that I was also playing around Nibiru here as well. So we're going to normal summon Spright Red, and then we get to add the Dracoback off the summon. Then we get to use the other adventure effect to add the Griffin Rider. Of course, we're going to discard the Dracoback. That will let it equip to the adventure. Now I can bounce the Hita and not proc the effect to add a fire monster. But I don't suspect my opponent is living through this turn anyway. They're going to call by the Terratop. That's great. That's so clearly Griffin bait. Yeah. They're very clearly baiting me here. So I could use Starter to grab Carrot, just because at this point I'm just going to, like, put enough damage on board for lethal and just want to have as many negates as possible. And then, yeah, there we go. So, I don't know. I think the fact that my opponent didn't concede as soon as it started comboing, sometimes that does make me a little suspicious. And there's no way to tell, obviously, if you're watching a replay from ladder, but even right now, I am like 90% sure my opponent had a Nibiru in their hand. I'm so sure of it, I just can't prove it. But if they did have a Nibiru, which I highly suspect they did, then summoning the red when we did, I think, was very crucial. To be fair, Griffin could have also been our 5th summon, but then it would have had to have discarded one of the cards in our hand. We could have just got rid of the extra Terratop, but if I can keep resources in hand and not have to, like, waste them like that, then I definitely want to do that. So if I didn't have exactly Spright Red to summon, because I did think they were on Nibiru still, then I would have discarded the extra Terratop to add the Griffin Rider and then just summon that as my 5th summon, right? So, okay, there is our first duel. Let's take a look at the next one now. Alright, our next opponent is going to be on the Resonator / Red Dragon deck. So, going to get to test out Adventure Spright against one of the newer builds here. We do get to go first here, which again is kind of a rarity nowadays for me. Unfortunately, this is one of those hands where we just did not open anything particularly great. Does happen occasionally. This is actually why we're playing 42 cards, is to kind of avoid hands like this. Namely, opening stuff like Takatam and, again, the Rite of or the Fateful Adventure, but especially the Dracoback, the cards that would get placed off of Rite of Armistier, right? So here I'm just going to have to T-set pass. Does not feel good, but if nothing else, we do have Imperm and Ash Blossom, so we're going to have to hope that's going to be enough to get us there. Opponent's going to lead with the Stone Sweeper, the Earthbound Prisoner, to add a Soul Resonator. Soul Resonator is going to get normal summoned, but first we're going to activate the Crimson Gaia. I'm going to use the Ash Blossom to negate the Crimson Gaia search. Even though I know they have Soul Resonator in their hand, and I know that's a 1-card combo line, I can use the Imperm to stop the Soul Resonator, and Ash Blossom on the Crimson Gaia is going to stop any potential follow-up that they may have here. So, ideally that's going to be the case. But yeah, after improving the Soul Resonator, they're going to use Supe Duskwalker, summoning it from hand, and then also summoning the Supe from hand. But one thing I want to note here, and this is something that I think 90% of players would have missed. They sent Called By to summon Supe Duskwalker, which I thought was really interesting, because I Ash Blossomed the Crimson Gaia, and they didn't Called By it, but when so that's really weird to me, right? It kind of makes you wonder what the last card in their hand is, right? Because think about Supe Duskwalker, right? They had to discard for it. Obviously, you don't discard Supe because you have to summon this, I assume, from, yeah, hand or deck. So they have to keep this in hand. So whatever their last card in hand is better than a Called By the Grave that they chose not to use against Ash Blossom. Otherwise, you would think they would just discard the other card for Supe Duskwalker. There are a lot of really small things like this in duels that can happen that can give you potential information about what's in your opponent's hand. Now, granted, I don't know for sure what the last card in my opponent's hand is, but I think it's very, very much worth keeping in mind that it is, in my opponent's eyes, better than the Called By, again, that they chose not to use against Ash Blossom. Maybe they just misclicked, I don't know, that could always be the case, but I thought that was really interesting. And actually, I'm remembering what the card is, now that I think about it. We are going to get to see what it is. So, I'm going to start by drawing the Spright Blue. That's great. I could draw just literally any level 2 monster for plays here, right? Going to go Red Blue, and here's our opponent's last card, Maxi. Which, if you think about it, you know, I can definitely see why my opponent would want to keep this over the Called By that they elected not to use against the Crimson Gaia. And we're starting to see my opponent's thought process as their last turn played out. when they activated Crimson Gaia, I used Ash Blossom. They probably figured that was sufficient bait and their Soul Resonator would resolve until I flipped up Imperm and threw their plan out of whack. Now, they can still make minor plays off the Supe Duskwalker and then the choice between Call By and Maxi. Now it seems really obvious why they discard the Call By despite not using it. Again, just there's so much information that's happening in duels, it's so easy to miss out on a lot of it. Actually, what's happening right here is even more information. So I'm going to use the red to try to negate the Maxi. I know my opponent has a hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss for follow-up, but while it can negate, it doesn't destroy. And furthermore, I'll still have the red on the field to be able to special summon the Jet. So here in this situation, I'm just going to end up going for it, right? Just going for lethal here. I'm going to link into the Spright Sprint. Sprint F is going to send the Angler. Angler F is going to summon the Sunfish. Now, I figured out that my quickest path to lethal, as in the least number of summons under Maxi, is actually going to be the Shadow Mosquito OTK with Sunfish. So here it is. Entering battle phase, going to start a Shadow Mosquito attacking the Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. That'll place a hallucination counter on it. Now I can battle with the Sunfish. They'll take 3,200. Oh yeah, that's just the effect trying to activate, but getting negated. Sunfish comes back, bring out another Sunfish from deck. By the way, Angler procs and actually summons the Beaver here. Oh, here I just threw out the Gamma Burst just cause, but don't actually need to do it because, as you might be noticing, the Shadow Mosquito actually does the damage before the attack goes through. So you do have to kind of watch your life points if you're running weak monsters into a stronger one, but again, the damage will go through before the attack finishes, right? So on that last attack there, I wasn't going to get lethaled anyway, but even if I had less life points than the difference between Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss and Nimble Sunfish's attack points, then I still would have won, because again, as I've said for the third time now, the damage goes through on Shadow Mosquito before the attack does, which is really good. So yeah, there's our cool little Shadow Mosquito OTK. There's our ladder games. The next two games we're going to see were actually from viewer duels in a duel room. So you'll be able to see our opponent's hands here. Let's take a look at those. Okay, our next opponent's going to be Blaze. Blaze is a frequent chatter on the streams. Love to see Blaze around. And they're going to be rocking probably one of the wackiest tier limit builds I think I've ever seen in my life. This is Trap Card Tier Limit. Blaze is going to start with the Tier Cash. I'm going to chain the Maxi, of course, in response to that. Alright. That's going to get summoned, banishing the Heartbeat, drawing Fateful. Isn't the best draw in the world here. Unfortunately for me, these 3 mills were insane, especially for a 60-card deck here. Mudora and Fairy Tail Snow don't need any explanation. The Needlebug Nest might not seem like an insane mill, but you're going to see why it is here in a moment. So, also, if you're wondering what this card, Rise to Full Height, is, don't worry, you'll become as aware as I was here shortly. So, I'm going to start by banishing the Water Enchanters from hand. Blaze is going to chain the Trap Trick, setting the Paleozoic Morella, which notably has the ability to set a trap card from the deck to the graveyard. Now, I foolishly elected not to Ash Blossom this, totally forgetting that there is a very important trap card that you do not want to hit the graveyard nowadays. That is, of course, going to be the Transaction Rollback, which is activating here to banish the Needlebug Nest and copy the effect, allowing Blaze to mill the top 5 cards of their deck, including a Nightsword Serpent and another copy of Rise to Full Height. Now, the reason this card is in the deck is for its graveyard effect, which we will see here shortly, but... Alright, Dracoback is equipping to the Adventure Token. I'm going to summon out the Wandering Griffin Rider here as well. Now, before the Omni comes down, Blaze is actually using the Rise to Full Height Graveyard effect, which says, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one monster you control. Your opponent's monsters cannot target or cannot attack for the rest of the turn except to attack that monster. So, they did it on, was it Nightsword Serpent? Yeah, so what that means is, unless one of my monsters is attacking exactly this Nightsword Serpent, then I can't attack this turn. So, that means, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to win the duel this turn. Alright, Griffin Rider is still going to, of course, resolve. Dracoback's going to equip. I'm going to use Dracoback to bounce the Tier Cash. Going to battle over this Nightsword Serpent. Alright, and after giving up seemed like pretty much almost everything they had, I decided to just go ahead and Griffin Rider this Fairy Tail Snow here, as I think there's only 4 cards total, yeah, in the graveyard, so Main phase 2, I'm going to normal summon the Nimble Sunfish, and while I can't OTK, I can still make some plays here. I'm going to summon a copy of Spright Elf. Not going for Sprint. You might notice I didn't go for Sprint here. Unfortunately, because I drew the second Nimble Sunfish there for a turn, that means if I send the Angler from my deck to the graveyard, I'm only going to summon one copy of Sunfish, which doesn't actually net me any more materials, right? So... Alright, Blaze is going to activate Tier Cache yet again. They have the Tier Element's Crime in hand in order to get that out. I'm just using Elf here to get back Max Seed, just to not get bothered my whole turn about Spright Elf's effect, right? So, it looks like both Meta Noise and Shiren are going to be proccing off this Tier Cache mill. That's going to fuse the Tier Cache with the Shiren for... I would have to imagine Kitkalos is coming out here. Yep, here is Kitkalos. I do have this Ash Blossom in my hand. So, I'm going to end up using that here on the Kitkalos F. Alright, but they do still have transaction rollback, so that's going to mill another Needlebug Nest, which is the Absolute King backcheck, as well as Tier Limit's Scream. So the Tier Scream is going to add a Tier Limit's trap card from deck to hand. That's going to be Soliac here. And then the backcheck is going to rearrange the top few cards of Blaze's deck. Passing back over to me after setting the Tier Limit's Soliac, so... and then there's also going to be, of course, whatever backcheck summons. Continuing my string of not great top decks at all. Melfi Penny, we might need to go over 42 for a deck like this, honestly. I kind of can't believe I'm saying that, but 44 might end up being correct here. We're setting Dice It. Don't worry if you don't know what that card does. We will actually see here right now. Dice It says, roll a 6-sided die. Apply the following effect on whose turn it is during your turn. Whoa. I thought I paused. Sorry about that. But yeah, basically during our turn, they're going to mill, and then if the result was 6, banish a card from their graveyard. They milled a 2, and then hit Shiren and Tortoise here. So, unfortunately, that does mean... Oh wait, that didn't proc, right? To fuse? No, it didn't. Okay. Alright, so... We do have the Tier Limit Soliac for the Sprint here. I'm trying to think what I was even trying to... get here. Just the last sunfish, I guess? I almost said sunflower. Alright, Soliac milling 5. It's going to mill the Hollow as well as the Scream. Scream adding yet another Tier Limits and yet another Meta Noise here. I think it's the second copy. And then milling the Rhino Heart, which is like, oh no, of course, because now, yeah, they have a tier card in hand. They can summon Rhino Heart, and oh, now they can send and fuse again. Nah, if, you know, if I'm gonna get, like, totally wrecked, by like, Lucky Mills or Top Decks, then I would always rather it be against you all than, than on ladders, so. I mean, even on ladder, I mean, it's like I said in that recent upload, right? It's like, thinking about that, that YouTube short I watched, you know, about the Mario Kart YouTuber. Again, the idea that our opponent doing cool things is something to be excited about, because, you know, it's not like we're the main characters of the universe. Our opponent deserves to be able to do cool things too. And sometimes that means that you're going to be, you know, the recipient of that. It's like, it's just a fact of life, but... Anyway, here is the Kaleido Heart coming back out, milling the Havness from deck. Kaleido Heart's going to put back my Fateful Adventure. Havness F will proc in order to fuse as well. So Havness is going to fuse with the... Was that Kitkalos in the yard? Yes, I imagine this is Rolkalos. Yep. For the Tier 11's Rolkalos. Normal summoning Shiren, and then overlaying for... Actually, I don't remember what this was. Oh, it's Redoer, of course. Who else would it be? Alright, Redoer F. That will proc the Shiren. Shiren's going to fuse itself and the Rhino Heart for, I imagine, Kitkalos yet again? I say I imagine. I was in this game. And it was just yesterday, too, at the time of recording this, so... Alright. Bringing back the tier cache, and then Kitkalos F. They get to mill 8. 8 more on top of the 2 that were already milled. There's Fiend Comedian, I know that card. Alright, should all be strong. Ariel's banishing some of my stuff. And then I also saw Fairy Tale Snow in the yard, so... This is definitely enough for lethal. It's just, again, because it was viewer duels, that's the main reason I'm not conceding here just yet. Usually if it's viewer duels, I just talk with chat and then let our opponent play out lethal there. Plus, again, with a deck this cool, I wanted to see what it was going to end up doing, so... Alright, there it is. We're going to take some damage here, and that is going to be enough to ultimately finish us off. But not before this last copy of Transaction Rollback is coming down to activate Fiend Comedian and banish my entire graveyard. So, good stuff, Blaze, good stuff. Thank you very much for the game and for showing us a really, really cool deck. We got one more game to check out against another viewer. Let us see that here. Alright, once again, in the vein of playing against cool decks, we're up against Examine, who is on Adventure Plunder. Yeah, Plunder, of course, being one of many decks that got a recent boost from the Adventure package, or rather, from Water Enchantress. I was going to say, the Adventure package releasing, no, that was a long time ago, rather from the Water Enchantress coming to 2 now, right? So... here, like, opening hand is a little bit weird. Opening both Nimble Angler means that, once again, for this game, Sprint is not going to be an option, unfortunately. But, it's all good. Yeah, the fact that I'm noticing in these replays, like, we didn't play very many games. We opened kind of wonky hands for a lot of them. So I think this might be a deck that needs to be more than 42 cards. I might have to do some more, calculations, as it were. Calculations. Really, just go to Yu-Gi-Oh!.Party, the website, and then, like, you know, run some numbers using their calculator. Which, by the way, if you're ever looking for a good probability calculator for Yu-Gi-Oh!, seriously, the website is Yu-Gi-Oh!.Party. Just type that in and you're good to go. But yeah, not the best end board here. Again, because we opened to both Nimble Angler, I'm going to have to end on Elf IP, bring back Carrot during Examine's turn here. So... we do the Smashers as well, though, to be fair. Okay, Faithful's going to add the Water Enchantress and then bin it here. So we know, if nothing else, that Griffin Rider is probably not going to be coming down. Of course, I couldn't see Examine's hand during the actual duel, but now we know that there was no Griffin in the hand there. They just go to add the Draco back here. Gonna want to use my IP before that Draco back comes down in order to go into Mech Knight Crusadia Avermax, because the Draco back does target, and Avermax can't be targeted in and of itself, and with IP it can't be destroyed by card effect either. Gonna end up using the Smashers on the Golden Hair. The thing that's kind of awkward about this kind of Sprite setup, right, where you have Elf, IP, and then either Red or Carrot, is that you actually can't really use Red/Carrot in that situation, at least not without giving up one of your Link 2s, and it's like, well, you're not going to give up IP, so you have to give up Elf, but if you're not running Nightmare Unicorn like I'm not, then you don't really have anything you can go into. So here I decided to use the Red for the Smashers instead of giving up my Elf and the ability to use my IP, right? That is the one very minor reason to play Nightmare Unicorn in the extra. But for pretty much any other reason, I just prefer the Underworld Goddess, right? The Goddess is also removal, and moreover, it's like, it towers out, and you don't have to, like, have a card in hand to discard to get rid of the monsters. Granted, it can only get rid of a monster. You can't, you know, Underworld away a back row, which is another advantage Nightmare Unicorn potentially has, but... Okay, so we did thankfully manage to make it through the last turn of Examines there, mostly thanks to the Avermax. They are going to negate my Gigantic with the Ash Blossom, and this was about the time that I started to wonder that maybe Plunder as a deck just doesn't have an out to Avermax made with IP. That is true of some decks, by the way. Some decks just don't play a single card that can out an Avermax if you make it with IP Masquerena, because all their stuff either targets and or destroys. Funnily enough, the last time I played an Auroradon combo deck with Kashira, I actually found out this was true of that style of deck too. My opponent made an Avermax with IP, and I was like, oh, I'd already done my Auroradon combo, so I was like, oh, I should be good, right? I've already done my comboing. It's not like I can, it's not like they're gonna disrupt me or anything. And then I looked through my whole deck and my extra deck, and I read every card, and I realized I don't have a single way to out this card. So the Avermax might seem a little bit weird, you know, in the Spright Extra, and be like, really? Do you really need to go for it? But it's like, yeah, I mean, again, you just never know. There are a significant number of decks out there that it is impossible to out this card. I don't think Plunder is one of them. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but maybe they don't have an out. we were talking about this in chat. I just don't remember what was said. Alright, they are also under the bug here for this one, so... Alright. Oh, the list! This was it. They actually did do the out. It's not just, we didn't just talk about the out. The out actually happened to me. The patrol plunder ship list does actually negate the Avermax here, because it doesn't target. But Avermax does still have its secret effect of being able to destroy or shuffle back a card in the field when it leaves the yard, or when it goes to the yard, rather. So, even when it does manage to get outed, the Avermax is still over here, putting in a lot of work. Definitely want to Ash Boss in this turn break tab. I'm not trying to deal with this engine. Not again. or not again, rather. Not in addition to everything else I already have to deal with, so. Gonna imperm this Blackbeard here, and I think we should be good at this point. We don't have any more gigantic sprites left in our extra deck, which is worth noting. But we do get to do the adventure set, because I haven't done that yet this game. So, Terratop for Takaton Borg, and then linking those off the Cherubini. We all know this part of the line by now. Cherubini is going to send the Water Enchantress as part of the cost, by the way. If you didn't know this about Cherubini, it actually sends the monster from the deck to the graveyard as part of the cost of the card. The effect is the attack gain. So, if they activate Cherubini and you imperm, that doesn't actually stop the well, I mean, you should see the monster going to the yard before you even have a chance to flip something like imperm. So, definitely worth noting for Cherubini there. Alright, gonna summon the Griffin Rider here. Drink it back F. We can bounce the Synchro, linking off the Cherubini and the Penny that we normally summon to go for the Spright Elf. Elf F to bring back the blue. Blue can then activate for Carrot, and then... Oh yeah, we just Onibimaru here. I love Onibimaru's Soul Sweeper. I would never take this card out of the extra deck. There's so many weird situations where this card comes up, and a lot of situations where it can make lethal, like right here, where it can make lethal where you might not normally be able to. Alright, and that's going to do it for our game against Examine, as well as this video. Everyone, thank you so very much for watching. As always, as ever, I greatly appreciate it. Let us now move on to our outro. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. That means a lot to me. It's also a great way to support the channel, so thank you very much in that way as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other ways, like the very special patrons that I am thanking here, you can do so by checking out some of the links in the description. One of those goes to the Patreon, where you can join these fine folk and support the channel that way. I do post daily content over on Patreon, so you do get something for support there. And if you're interested, I also have a coaching tier option as well. Details again will be on Patreon in the link below. Also in the description linked below is my Twitch page where I stream a few times a week. You can go ahead and check that out, follow or subscribe over there if you ever want to catch me live. You'll also find my second YouTube channel if you feel like subscribing over there to watch some of the Twitch VODs as well as some additional non-Yu-Gi-Oh related content that I make over there. Again, any of those links you want to check out is all a great way of supporting. But again, even if you don't do that, just watching was also a fantastic way to support. And once again, I have to thank you so very much. But in any case, this is Hexlex. I'm going to be signing out, and I'm hoping you have a fantastic day.